Delimitations in research. Delimitations actually it is different from the limitations. Delimitation is nothing but the boundaries which we are keeping for our research study. Delimitation refers to the specific boundaries or limitations that we are keeping for our study before starting our study. And the delimitations may be related to a variety of factors, the population which we are going to study, or the area, the location where you are going to do your research, and the time limitation, and the research design, and the methodology which you are going to use for your research study. These are the things, boundaries we will be keeping for our research study will be coming under the delimitation. The importance of delimitations in research studies. So how far it's important in research studies. The first thing, it will provide focus. So delimitations helps researchers focus on a specific area, because the research, if you are taking, it is a generalized statement. So the population or the sample, if you are taking a vague amount of population or a sample, we can't complete our task within a stipulated period. So that we are keeping a boundaries so that we can focus only to the specific area or the specific sample, and we can fulfill our criteria, and we can able to get the answer for our research question. So that's the delimitation, help researcher to focus only on specific area. So here we are keeping the boundaries, and we are keeping specific aspects of the research question, and it also increases the validity. Delimitations ensure the research is more valid if you are keeping a boundary, and here if by keeping the boundary, the researcher can clearly specify the criteria of inclusion as exclusion. So who all he is going to include in the study, and who all she is going to exclude in her study. And it also improves generalizability. So by having the specific criteria and specific focus after getting the answer for the research question, by keeping certain criteria, we can able to generalize the result, whichever answer you are getting from the research question. So by specifying the sample size, geographical region, time frame, and the relevant factors, the researcher can provide more accurate estimate, and she can able to generalize the study result. It will enhance feasibility. So the delimitation, and by keeping the boundary, there is no need of getting tension by overseeing all the things. So here we are fixing certain criteria, so we will be able to accomplish our task within a stipulated period. By setting a realistic parameters, researcher can ensure that the study is feasible for completing within a time, and the researchers will be available. And clarify the scope. So it will be helpful to clarify the scope of the researcher. So by explicitly stating what is included and excluded, the researcher can avoid confusion and ensure that readers understand the boundaries of the study. And types of delimitation. So what are the delimitation we will be keeping for our study? The first one, time delimitation we will be keeping. So the time boundary. So always we will be narrow the scope of the study, and we will be keeping a fixed time to do our research study. And geographical delimitation. So the geographical delimitation is nothing but the location where you are going to do our research. So that is the delimitation of significant to ensure that the research is relevant to the intended population or location. The population delimitation. So the population delimitation is here we are focusing the specific group of people, and it is important to ensure that the research is targeted to only a specific group. Example, only the patients those who are admitted with the hypertension or diabetes or seizure or depression, like the specific group only we are keeping as a boundary. And data delimitation. So the data delimitation refers to specific types of data. Either it can be a demographic data or a clinical variable or a questionnaire. So whatever the data which is mandatory for our research study, that alone we are keeping as a boundary. Then comes scope delimitation. So here the scope delimitation refers to specific aspect of dimensions, okay, cognitive or affective or psychomotor, whatever is needed for a research study, that we will be keeping. So how to write delimitation? First of all, as a researcher, we have to identify the scope of the study. So here, determine the extent of research by defining the boundary. So as a researcher, we should be aware about of the boundary whichever we are keeping, to identify the areas that are within the scope of the research that are outside of scope. And second thing, we have to determine the time frame. So decide the time period. So whether it's 1 month or 2 months or a year, depend upon your study, we have to fix the time frame. Then identify the population. So you have to determine the group of people or objects that study. So to whom you are taking age group, example 20 to 40 years, and gender or profession, and the geographical location, all the things we have to keep in mind. And the next one is establish the sample size. Determine the number of participants, whoever is involved in your study, either it may be a 60 or 100, that depend upon your sample size, the criteria you have formulated for your research study. The next is determine the variables. So you have to identify the variable that is measured in your study, that is geographical, demographic variable or clinical variables, whatever is needed for your study, that alone you will be setting. Then explain the limitations. So explain the limitation, actually the limitation you will be finding out after completion of your study. So whatever the limitations, whatever the challenges you have faced in your study. Then justify the limitations. So always whatever the limitations or the challenges, whatever you have faced in your study, we have to rationalize it. So here you can see the difference between the delimitations and the limitations. So most of the times researchers used to confuse between the delimitation and the limitation. So most of the time we may think that both are similar. But delimitation is the boundaries of the study which you are keeping before conducting the study, and the limitation is the characteristics of the research design or the methodology. And delimitation is the elements outside of the boundaries we are setting and depend upon the researcher's decisions. But the limitation is the thing which we will be facing during your study. That is a limited financial resources, you may not be getting adequate resources, and you may be going beyond your budget, and you may be needed beyond your time which you have set for your study, and extra technology you have needed, extra resources you might have needed. These all the things will be coming under the limitation. And the delimitation always, it helps to narrow the study, and the limitation influences the validity and reliability of the study. Thank you.